Imagine for a moment if the most alluring hypothesis of our time is really leading us in the wrong particular path. Simulation theory can be found in every place. At the same time as it is the backbone of science fiction epics, it is the stuff that Elon Musk casually slips into interviews as if it were apparent. It is the rabbit hole of Reddit forums. The concept is straightforward, yet it is almost too straightforward. Perhaps what we consider to be reality is nothing more than a very sophisticated computer simulation. Everything you've ever thought and everything you've ever experienced is encoded. For a mind that has been formed by technology, it is thrilling, it is elegant, and it is tremendously fulfilling. When all is said and done, we are immersed in coding, gaming, swiping, and interfaces. Machines are the tools through which we comprehend the world. Therefore, it is only natural that we are intrigued by the possibility that we are inside one. However, despite the fact that this hypothesis is gaining acceptance, there is something about it that seems oddly empty. This is not because it is incorrect. Perhaps it is not. Rather, it is because it is missing something. Something that is within close proximity, something that is quiet, something that does not require rendering since it is already present. Are you sure you haven't experienced it? When you are alone in nature or lost in a dream, when the world seems less like code and more like a whisper, when there is a presence behind the pixels, and when there is a mystery within the mirror, those fleeting moments of quiet are when you feel the most connected to the universe. The purpose of this film is not to disprove the notion of simulation. Rather, it is to delve further. What if reality is not something that is intentionally manufactured, but rather something that is consciously unfolding? This is a new kind of question. What would happen if the one element that simulation theory does not take into account, awareness itself, is not only a consequence of effective programming, but rather the very origin of everything? We will investigate that concept not as a belief, but as an experience that we have had firsthand. You will also be invited to participate in a quick inner experiment as the story draws to a close. A sneak peek at something that might be more real than any simulation could ever hope to accomplish. I would like for you to remain with me if you are prepared to pause what you believe you know, and if you have ever had the suspicion that there is something beyond the code. Due to the fact that this route does not travel any further into the simulation, it can be considered an exit. Greetings and welcome to the depths of reality, or perhaps the simulation itself. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you are new to it. The hypothesis of simulation is appealing because it is consistent with the environment that we have constructed around ourselves. The value of our lives is measured in data, and we live via screens and work through systems. Our minds have been conditioned to take everything into consideration in terms of networks, algorithms, and code. In light of this, we give a slight nod whenever someone suggests that reality itself is a type of simulation. There is logic behind it. Our tools, our games, and even our fancies about artificial intelligence becoming gods are all reflectors of this phenomenon. Simulation theory asserts this fundamentally at its foundation. Creating conscious beings within a virtual environment that is indistinguishable from the actual world is something that could be accomplished by a society that is sufficiently sophisticated. In the event that this is feasible, the argument suggests that the likelihood of us being in the basic reality is low. It is mathematical and rational, and it is ideal for a world that is heavily influenced by science fiction and silicon. That being said, it is reassuring in a peculiar manner. Chaos is transformed into design by it. It provides a solution to the most important question, which is why we are here. Even if the solution is a machine, at least it is something. It is a system that we are able to speculate about, study, and possibly even debug. However, beneath the excitement of the idea, there is something delicate that is being flattened here. It is impossible to find any beauty in simulation theory. It does not take into account either love or loss. Neither does it explain why a certain tune may bring tears to your eyes, nor does it explain why holding someone's hand can make you feel as if the entire universe has stopped spinning. The human experience is reduced to outputs as a result. Fear is transformed into objects by it. As a result, it converts depth into data. When you make an effort to live your life in this manner, when you perceive yourself as a character responsible for running code in the system of another person, life begins to feel less alive. The limits of simulation theory are acknowledged by even the thinkers who contribute to it. Its unfalsifiability is a point that philosophers emphasize. If you are unable to take a test, how can you possibly know? Scientists like Sabine Hassenfelder consider it to be a diversion, a layer that cannot be proven and does not contribute anything to the field of physics. Indeed, there are others who believe that it only substitutes one enigma for another. The assumption is made that awareness is merely another emergent property of code, rather than questioning what consciousness actually is. Nevertheless, this is the issue. There is one issue that no theory can ignore, and it is not addressed. A single component that was not simulated. One presence that enables all theories to be conceived of and realized. Be conscious of it, mostly due to the fact that regardless of how persuasive the logic is, or how sophisticated the simulation is, it still requires something or someone to feel it. Explanation of the nature of reality is the goal of simulation theory, which does not inquire about the composition of reality. And that omission completely alters the situation. Possibly that is not incorrect. It's possible that we are inside of something. However, the question that is more important than the nature of the situation we are in is who is aware of it. This consciousness is not encoded. It does not depend on power. It is not situated in space or time. It is present before the question is posed, and it continues to be present even after the theory has been dissipated. Also, if you look attentively, you'll notice that it has never been isolated from anything else. The concept of consciousness is frequently regarded as an afterthought, a consequence of neurons activating, and of matter being complex enough to become aware of itself. On the other hand, there is a growing consensus among philosophers that the opposite is true, that the material world does not give rise to awareness. Within the realm of consciousness, matter shows up. They are not referring to something in a parlance. Rather, they are pointing to something that cannot be refuted. Every single thing that we are aware of and every single thing that we have ever experienced has occurred not in the outside world, but rather within our own awareness. At this very moment, you are not experiencing a brain, and you are not even experiencing a world. Rather, you are experiencing noises, sights, sensations, and appearing in consciousness. This may appear to be a theoretical concept, but in reality, it is the most immediate truth that can be found. Awareness is the single thing that you have never been lacking in your life. It is not something that you possess, but rather something that you are. And it has been present in every single moment of your life. It is hardly a novel viewpoint. Since the beginning of time, philosophical idealism has been subtly opposing the materialist worldview. Beginning with Berkeley's concept of to be as to be perceived, and continuing with Schopenhauer's conception of the universe as a representation, the concept that reality emerges from within the mind has deep, deep roots. Currently, it is being re-examined with a whole new perspective. The term analytic idealism was coined by Bernardo Kastrup, a former computer scientist who later became a philosopher. That which we perceive to be the physical cosmos is, according to his theory, better accurately described as a projection within a more profound sphere of global consciousness. It is described in a more personal manner by Rupert Spira. In the background of every experience is the ever-present presence of awareness. Even in the most cutting-edge sectors of research, there has been a beginning of this phenomenon being encountered. For a long time, quantum physicists have been perplexed by the observer effect, which refers to the manner in which the behavior of a particle shifts depending on whether or not it is being measured. In certain interpretations, the presence of observation itself is more important than the tool that is being used to make the observation. The neurologist Giulio Tononi is the one who devised the integrated information theory, which proposes that consciousness might be a fundamental property of the world, similar to space or time, and that it is not something that is generated, but rather something that just is. In addition, there is a rising concern in the fields of philosophy, neurology, and psychology over the materialist premise that experience can be reduced to chemistry. Because it is not chemical, experience is something that is experience. Even simulation theory, with all of its metaphors connected to technology, assumes the existence of consciousness. The simulation must be communicated to at least one person. Even the theorizing that is being done about it, those thoughts, those words, in this exact moment, are all taking place within a different realm than the virtual one. As a result, the simulation might be real, but it might also not be. But regardless of the circumstances, it is manifesting itself within something that simulation theory is unable to describe. The presence of awareness is not dependent on models, it is not dependent on proof, it does not require belief, and it just manifests itself. In addition, as you become aware of that, you will realize that it starts to alter the appearance of everything else. Because there was already something here, quietly knowing, long before we had the means to probe the universe. Long before any concept of simulation existed, there was already something here. There is a distinction between being aware of something and having a comprehension of it. Concepts remain inside of one's head. Mind is not where awareness is located. It's the manifestation of the mind within itself. Shut your eyes for a brief period of time. A notion comes to mind, followed by another. Who or what is the origin of them? They have arrived. They disappear completely. On the other hand, something won't come or go. Something is just present, and it is conscious of everything that is going on. This is not a theory to argue based on, nor is it a belief to accept. This is a subtle observation, something that is so commonplace that it is always overlooked. One cannot conceive of consciousness. In no way is it a model. In no way is it dependent on the language. It makes no difference regardless of whether you refer to it as consciousness, presence, or nothing at all. It is the silence that lies behind the doing of thinking, the space in which each and every feeling is expressed. A background that remains unchanged, even while everything else around it is changing. It is precisely in this area that simulation theory and even idealism ultimately fail to meet expectations. They point in the direction of something enormous, but they continue to circle it from the outside. You cannot be brought into it by any theory. Only first-hand experience can do that. Keep an eye on your thoughts as they move through your head. Take note of the manner in which they attempt to explain, describe, and grasp the thoughts, and then deflect attention away from the thoughts themselves and toward the thing that is perceiving them. The threshold is that alteration, which is so tiny that it is almost undetectable. You are not able to arrive at it. You stumble upon it. Each and every mystic tradition has headed in this direction. The formless purity that lies beyond the eyes, not to a god in the sky or a structure in the stars, is what we are referring to here. Pure mind is what Buddhism refers to. According to Advaita, it is the self. Mystics who lived in the desert referred to it as the silent little voice. In the terminology of neuroscience, it is referred to as the observer effect, which is the prediction loop of the brain and the component that no scan can provide a satisfactory explanation for. A paradox has even been observed by a few of the scholars. When one is under the influence of psychedelics or profound meditation, the activity of the brain decreases, but the sensation of consciousness increases. Clarity is increased with less material. Rather than vanishing, presence is key. It is not that you are being asked to believe this, rather you are being invited to take notice of it. Neither later nor after further explanation is allowed. Right now. Even this statement is being read into consciousness at this very moment. Even uncertainty can be found within it. It is not a matter of opinion or preference, and it does not require comprehension in order to be believed. And as soon as you catch a sight of that, everything begins to make sense again. This is a simulation, which is the question that has to be asked. To something that is more personal, something that is not expressed, something that does not look for explanations, because it is already rooted in the one thing that does not change. It is not a theory that is being attempted to characterize this location. Rather, it is the very presence that is being attempted to be described. The idea of simulation was able to express something that is quite real. Our yearning for order, for purpose, and for a place in the weird unfolding of reality. It provided us with a metaphor that was contemporary, recognizable, and almost completely mechanical in its refinement. One thing, however, was not included. The model was constructed on the idea that awareness is secondary, an accident of complexity, and a side effect of information. This is not because the model was wrong, rather it was constructed on this assumption. Nevertheless, despite the numerous layers of investigation, there was one thing that didn't change. The presence that is aware of everything. Taking note of this does not necessitate belief, it does not rely on conclusions, and it calls for something that is significantly less complicated. At this very moment, trace a single idea all the way back to its origin and pay attention to the seconds that passed before the thought appeared. Not only is there no color, but there is also no edge to that location. Nevertheless, it is not void, it is not empty, and it is conscious. That was the point that the simulation theory was unable to arrive at. This was not because it was overly superficial. Rather, it was because it was searching outward when the answer had always been directed inward. It is not necessary for you to decode reality since you are already enclosed within the one thing that does not require decoding. For a moment, or perhaps even two, continue with that. Moreover, if anything quiet opens, you should just let it. There is no way to explain it. In addition to what is seen on the screen, there is more to investigate. In the event that this resonated with you on a profound level, you are not alone. You can use this space for that purpose. You are invited to subscribe because you are not a follower, but rather a fellow explorer of whatever this is. This will allow us to continue developing this investigation together. In addition, it is possible that you will begin to perceive what has always been present in the pause that exists between the theories. Without being built or imitated, it is simply conscious.